Well, hello there folks, this is Liaj and welcome to a video for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Having finally progressed to the end of Master Rank, I feel like it's about time that I started exploring all the possibilities we have for playing the game's weapons in interesting new ways. To start things off, I felt it only appropriate to cover what's new with my personal main weapon, the Gunlance. Now, like all weapons in Sunbreak, the Gunlance has received a total of 3 new switch skills. In addition, with the new switch skill swap feature, some of the existing skills will have become more viable to run as they would no longer require sacrificing a more useful skill in order to equip them. Altogether, this allows for all sorts of possibilities for new playstyles, but right now I would like to focus on a single switch skill for the Gunlance. If you have played a decent amount of Gunlance in Sunbreak, or have even hunted with a Gunlance user, you are probably now well aware of the new star of the show when it comes to the weapons skills. We are of course talking about Hail Cutter. We are of course talking about Bullet Barrage. Not only is Bullet Barrage really cool and fun to use, it is one of the most effective damage sources for the weapon. If you want to kill things as fast as possible, you will likely find yourself making heavy use of this skill. Of course, if you ever hunt with other players, they may not have as fun of a time as you are having. At any rate though, this is all irrelevant because today we are not talking about Bullet Barrage, but instead we will be talking about the other new Gunlance Silkbind, Reverse Blast. While not nearly as powerful as Bullet Barrage, the Reverse Blast has some really interesting utility and is just really fun to use, so I definitely think it is worth covering what exactly we can do with it. Let's go ahead and get started with the basics of this skill. When you unlock the Reverse Blast, it can be equipped in the Silkbind slot for the input of left trigger plus the right face button. This results in replacing the Guard Edge Silkbind, which admittedly is a very good defensive skill. It is a bit of a shame to lose this skill, but fortunately both of these skills can fulfill about the same general purpose, so it's mostly a matter of each skill providing a different bit of utility. So now let's try the skill out. Upon activation, we will very quickly prepare a blast dash and fire ourselves backwards. This of course is a much faster startup than a normal blast dash, as the primary use for this move is as a defensive technique, allowing us to quickly retreat from any incoming danger. After we fly for a little bit, if we do not do anything, we will throw out a wire bug in order to stop ourselves midair. I'm honestly not a huge fan of this because it means we can't go quite as far as a normal dash, but I guess they had to justify this move's wire bug cost somehow. Aside from this difference, the Reverse Blast does maintain all the functionality of a regular blast dash. If you are curious about the various cool techniques we can perform with the blast dash, the very first video I released on this channel actually covers them in detail. You might be surprised about all the things we can do with it. In addition to the base blast dash features, however, the Reverse Blast gives us even more things we can do. For starters, the Reverse Blast also functions as its own attack. While we are in flight during a Reverse Blast, our shield that we hold in front of us now functions as a hitbox. If our shield comes into contact with a monster during this time, it will deal impact damage and can KO if it hits a monster's head. This isn't a huge hit, but it will often give us a little extra damage as we blast out of danger. Let's now cover the defensive properties of this move. The obvious use case for the Reverse Blast is using it before a monster attacks, so you are simply not where the attack is. However, what if we were to find ourselves in a situation where the move will not activate fast enough to get us to safety? As it turns out, we will be perfectly fine because the Reverse Blast has iframes during the startup. When preparing the dash, we will actually be completely immune to damage until we leave the ground. What this means is that, counterintuitively, when an attack is coming for us, it may be best to activate the Reverse Blast at the last possible second. This causes the attack to phase through us and then we can safely dash away. Now once we become airborne, we are no longer immune to damage, but there is one more thing to note. For a few frames at the start of the dash, we do gain Hyper Armor. This means that an attack will hurt us, but it will not stop us from continuing our dash. This may be fine, just make sure to keep an eye on your health. After flying for a little bit, however, we will lose this hyper armor and can once again be smacked down. Now here's another tip. You may have read in the description for the reverse blast skill that if no shells are loaded, you will perform a quick reload. Let's take a look at that behavior. So this quick reload is unlike our usual quick reload. It is quite fast, but only reloads a single shell that we then will use for the dash. Now the skill description makes it seem like this reload is a bad thing, but fortunately we are still quite invincible when we perform it. If we compare the animations, we can see that performing this reload gives us a little bit of extra time on the ground before going into the dash. As far as I can tell without any frame data, this means that we will be invincible for a little bit longer, which can make the timing a little bit easier. So don't be afraid to perform a reverse blast after, say, a full burst. Alright, we still have quite a bit to cover, so let's keep things moving. The reverse blast is a very good tool for quick repositioning when compared to a normal blast dash. Let's take a look at the default blast dash. If we wanted to dash in the opposite direction of where we were facing, we first have to physically turn around before firing. Now let's say we are in the middle of a combo. To do this, we have to cancel out of it first, probably with an evade, then we have to shuffle around, and finally we can charge up the dash and fire. This is a technique that I would occasionally use for repositioning, but it is oftentimes more trouble than it is worth. But now let's say we wanted to reverse blast in a particular direction. So first things first, the reverse blast will take us in the opposite direction of where we are facing, which means we will need to input the opposite direction of where we want to go. But look at this, without having to turn our character at all, a directional input will immediately allow us to aim the dash where we want it. This becomes much more apparent when we do this mid-combo, as we did not stop and turn ourselves to fire in a different direction. So essentially, just point the stick in the opposite direction of where you want to go, and you can dash in any direction on the fly. Here's another technique that I haven't used much myself, but it might be worth covering. So have you ever used an aerial burst before? If you run blast dash, then probably not, and even if you don't, it's still extremely situational. To activate an aerial burst, you must be in the air with your weapon drawn and input the right trigger and the right face button. This is the same input for a mid-air blast dash, so if you have blast dash equipped, this move is simply not possible. However, without blast dash, getting yourself in the air with your weapon drawn is pretty tricky. Basically, your only options were doing an evade off a ledge or drawing into a mid-air shell. But now, thanks to the reverse blast, we do have a new option for getting ourselves into the air. If we do not have the regular blast dash equipped, we can perform an aerial burst after being launched by a reverse blast. After launching, we will first need to fire an aerial shell to cancel out of the dash, and then simply press the input and we can do the aerial burst. As a quick note, you can aim your attacks in any direction while dashing, so point the stick at your target before firing the first shell to make sure the burst connects. Because we can swap switch skills, we can always slot in charged shelling on one scroll if we want to do this on demand. Alright, it is now the moment you have all been waiting for. All of what I have covered so far is really all you need to know for using the skill effectively in a hunt. But who cares about any of that when we have the potential for maximum coolness? So here's the deal. The basic blast dash has the very unfortunate limit of only allowing you to fire up to 2 times in the air. When firing the first dash from the ground, that makes a total of 3 possible dashes you can do before being forced to land. However, the reverse blast does not care about this limit. What this means, as far as I can tell, is that the new maximum amount of dashes you can perform before landing is 5. If we want to maximize our possible dashes, then we will need a gunlance with normal shelling. This will give us the maximum amount of ammo to use for mid-air dashes. Now unfortunately, a reverse blast cannot be activated immediately after a regular blast dash. With that in mind, let me show you how to chain a regular blast dash into a reverse blast. So as we can see, we must first fire a regular shell to stop ourselves midair before we can do the reverse blast. This same principle applies after doing a reverse blast as well, so we still need to fire that shell before doing another one. Because of this, the amount of total dashes we can do is limited by our ammo. So here's me doing as many dashes as I can with 7 shells. This brings the total up to 5. I'm pretty sure the math will always work out that no more can be done than this. However, as a nice little bonus, we can also perform a reverse blast in the air even if we have no shells. If we perform the reverse blast with no shells, we can still do the quick reload in the air, which lets us do one more dash. This actually means that we can get 5 dashes with only 6 shells, but a long gun lance with 5 shells will unfortunately be 1 short. Okay, now you might ask, why would we even want to do this? Well, the better question really is, why wouldn't we want to do this? I don't know if you will be setting any amazing records if you spend all your time flying around, but imagine how cool you'll look doing it. Some of the coolest content I have seen created for Rise is not these speed runs, but instead these silly stunts and trick kills that people can come up with. In my opinion, the Gunlance already had potential for some of the coolest things, and something as simple sounding as 2 additional mid-air dashes may actually open up a huge new world for what can be done. Plus, since the reverse blast functions as an attack, I can imagine the fun people will have doing mid-air takedowns with it. So anyways, that is actually about it for this video. Really, my main goal was simply to show off some of the potential this skill adds to the weapon. Whether you are interested in trying out some cool tricks or just want to add a bit more mobility to your hunts, I hope this video gave you some ideas to spice up your playstyle. I think I might have a few more videos planned focusing on a few specific skills added in Sunbreak, but I also want to come up with some more in-depth guides for different ways to play the various weapons. So if you enjoyed the video, a like is always appreciated, and feel free to subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. Alright, well for now, thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.